Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Social Web TV, the internet TV show that answers the question, who owns your data? With these two simple words, you do. And yes, it's another action-packed week in opening up the social web.
We're back from a Thanksgiving break. Of course, the social web didn't seem to take much of a break for Turkey Day the way we did. So.
No breather. It looks like the end of the year is going to be action-packed. Big story this week is Facebook Connect, which we've talked about before, is rolling out of its kind of quiet testing mode and really opening up to a bunch of other sites and getting a lot of really good press coverage.
It's led to a lot of people to question what does Facebook Connect's rollout mean for OpenID? Are they competitive? Does Facebook Connect going to mean the end of the OpenStack? I thought it was great to see a really good piece in the New York Times by Brad Stone over the weekend. I think certainly talking about getting this message into the more mainstream and sort of asking some of these questions. Another good piece in Wired. So it's really people starting to pay attention to this in a big way and a lot of questions flying.
Yeah, and so what we've noticed is a lot of people are framing the question as Facebook Connect versus OpenID and really raising the question, has Facebook Connect kind of done an end game and made OpenID less likely to be successful out there? So we thought we'd focus on that in this episode and thought we'd also reach out to folks. This morning I Twittered about this topic we were going to do and got a little bit of feedback. In fact, David Recordin, who's not here with us today, was one of the early responders, and he was quick to note that he really thought that the media covering it as Facebook Connect versus OpenID was kind of, well, in his words, lame and short-sighted. And then we had a tweet chimed in from Max Engel of MySpace, who suggested that really this should be more a discussion of Open Connect. So let's jump in and try and explain for folks what we think is going on here, which I think is actually something a heck of a lot bigger than any one technology.
Yeah, I mean, I think the punchline is, the whole web is going social, as we've been saying, and that's going to be something that affects every site. And so it's a false dichotomy to think about Facebook Connect or OpenID. What instead you should be thinking about is the sort of social features that both Facebook Connect and the OpenStack are starting to deliver. And in fact, I'm a big fan of Facebook Connect because I think by making the problem sort of more constrained to just Facebook data and just Facebook technology, while that sort of limits the applicability of the technology, it does allow them to go faster and really kind of own the system end to end. And so they've been able to do, I think, a lot of great innovation around making the user experience super seamless, making it very easy to drop the code in. And they're giving all of these sites a taste of the benefits that I think any site doing this sort of social web interaction with any other site will really offer. So if you look at like TechCrunch, for example, hooked up now, if you want to leave a comment on TechCrunch, as opposed to just leaving anonymous comments the way it was before, you can now connect your Facebook account in. And when you leave a comment, it'll have your Facebook photo and your name filled out. And you can also drop a feed story into your Facebook page that says, hey, I left a comment over at TechCrunch, and create that kind of virtuous cycle of discovery we talked about.
It was also kind of cool to see that there were well over 200 comments on that one post alone, just as a result of lots of people wanting to check out the new feature.
And so if you think about that, people focus on the Facebook aspect of it, but if you really step back, the question is, for a business like TechCrunch, is it valuable to their business to provide a way for users who already have an account somewhere else to be able to connect that account in and leave messages that are less anonymous? And is it valuable for them to be able to create feed activity based on leaving a comment and show up in their social network or aggregator of choice? Does that drive more comments? Does that drive more engagement? Does that lower spamminess? Does that increase discoverability? And either it will or it won't. And there's a set of related questions like, can users figure out how to do this? And do they understand what they're doing? And do they like it? But if those things are true, which I think they probably will be, then if you're TechCrunch, your next thought is, gee, this is great. How do I make sure everybody, whether or not they use Facebook, can take advantage of this? Because as we've seen in the blogosphere already, people saying, well, gee, how come I can't have that go out into Twitter? How come I can't have that go out into FriendFeed? How come I can't have that go out into Plaxo? How come I can't have that go out to my own personal blog, etc.? And if you're TechCrunch, you want, or any of these sites, right, you want to let your users use whatever tool they happen to use, right? You want maximum distribution and maximum coverage. And so, a lot of these other sites, if you look at what Google and Yahoo and MySpace and AOL, et cetera, they're all using, OpenID and OAuth and portable contacts and Open Social and so forth to accomplish this. It's going to be able to enable the same sort of scenario. But the first question you have to get past is that whole scenario worth doing or not in the first place? And so a lot of these sites are going to get to learn about that using Facebook. And so I think that's going to be good for everybody.
Yeah, it's really interesting. There's essentially, I think the mistake that's being made by some is assuming that this is a kind of a quick sprint, that it's all going to get determined in the next few weeks. And in reality, there's such a bigger shift going on. It's the very blueprint for the web is changing to a model of web-wide live stream aggregation as the kind of personal newspaper or interface to all of this. And in that model, the social networks and other sites like portals are becoming online identity providers. And so that kind of massive transformation will play out over months and maybe even years as well. Sure. And I think the key thing here is that, as I said in the Wired piece, I think that Facebook Connect is in fact the best thing to happen to not only OpenID, but also this whole new open stack. So that's pretty cool.
And I think another piece of why I totally agree with that comment is it's not enough to make the technology work. It has to really make sense for users. And it is sort of a new behavior to say, rather than signing up for TechCrunch to leave a comment on TechCrunch, I'll bring in my existing profile or account from another site. And so working out that kind of user experience issues are really important. And obviously, as we've talked about on this show before, there's been a lot of work within the open community to work on some of those user experience issues. There was a big UX summit. There was more of that at IIW. And Facebook's been very involved in those discussions. I mean, because again, we all want the same outcome, which is this: you can show up with an account you've already got, you can share back what you're doing, and exactly how you implement that is sort of separate from how should it all work to the user when it does work. And so there's a lot of complementarity there as well.
Now, one other thing going on, in fact, happening right now as we're recording this show, and a good example of multiple implementations around this same blueprint, but this one based on the open stack, is something that Google's doing called Google Friend Connect. And as I look in Twitter right now, every few minutes I see half a dozen new updates of people saying, hey, I've just got Google Friend Connect live on my site.
Right.
And these are all sorts of different sites, and the tweets are coming in French and Spanish, and it's happening all over the world today. Again, it's kind of interesting. This project that was announced a while ago and has been in a quiet build and test mode is now today, I think, going web-wide. We'll definitely include some links to some of the better sites. But this morning, I checked out a few of them. I'd follow a link in a tweet, and in a second or two, I'd have an account on a small content site that I wouldn't necessarily otherwise have registered for. My activity in that site, a couple things. My profile photo from Plaxo comes in. My friends list or address book from Plaxo comes in, is available to me for use there. And I know I invited you to one of the sites. Yep. And I also discovered a few sites by seeing things going on in my Pulse activity stream within Plaxo. So again, under the hood, it's all open stack.
Mm-hmm. And if you think about it, it's exactly that same user benefit like we talked about with the TechCrunch model, this showing up with an account you've already got, having a name and photo already there, having the activity flow back into your aggregator of choice, having other people discover it and come on and see you, being able to use your existing address book or social graph as a filter to find who you know and invite new people, but completely different technology. And I think there's also some misconception there where I think some people think that Google is making a land grab to sort of counter Facebook's land grab for Google Friend Connect versus Facebook Connect. But actually, if you look at the way Google Friend Connect works, it's not Google specific. It's just a sort of easy copy and paste delivery vehicle for the open stack. So any site that pastes in the Friend Connect code to let users log in and leave comments and so forth, what's actually happening under the hood is OpenID and OAuth and OpenSocial and things like that. And so, for example, as we talked about earlier, Plaxo is integrated as one of the providers in Friend Connect because we speak these open standards. And so John's able to go put his Plaxo account in and use it on these sites, and Google's just sort of helping light up the long tail of the web, but lots of other sites are going to be able to benefit from that. And in fact, I think Google's gone to great pains to not put themselves in a position of unfair advantage just because they're the ones delivering the infrastructure.
And ironically, I mean, Plaxo and Orchid are among the choices there. logically, there should be other ones as well, and I
Right.
know Google's open to it. It's kind of a shame, actually, that Facebook ended up pulling the plug, because you would also want to be able to have your
Yeah.
activities get shared back into Facebook as all part of
Right.
that virtuous cycle.
Yeah, for people who don't remember, Google had built Facebook this is actually before Facebook Connect came out, but Facebook has their own APIs, and so Google built a conduit where you could connect your Facebook account in, and Facebook decided they weren't comfortable with this, and of course now they've got Facebook Connect, which is doing a somewhat similar thing, but now any site that wants to enable this sort of scenario is forced with this choice of, do I do it the open way, or do I do it the Facebook way, or do I do both, or do I start with one? And obviously that's ultimately not good for anyone. So the hope is, I think, that once people really get excited about how this technology works, there's going to be natural pressure to make the technologies converge in a way that you can use any site you want. And that's certainly what we're betting on.
Yeah. Other things going on in the OpenStack that we want to share before ending the show. One of them is on portable contacts. What's the latest there, Joseph?
Yeah, so I think portable contacts is getting more and more sort of visible and prominent and mature. And so we've opened up the group quite a bit more now. Anybody can now join and add messages, and we're starting to see a lot of lively discussion and implementations. I don't know if we mentioned on a previous show that there's now somebody wrote an Android app, Sean Sullivan, that you can take any portable contacts provider and download all the phone numbers onto your mobile phone. And we've also started engaging with a group in the IETF, which is a big standards body, working on a project called CardDAV, which you may or may not have heard of, but it's another sort of standard being worked on for sharing address book info. The big proponent of that is Apple. They're using CardDAV to power the address book sharing functionality in Snow Leopard, their new release. And so, it's a different set of technologies, a slightly different starting point, but very much a similar charter to have a kind of web-wide standard way of accessing your address book. So really interesting to see that kind of cross-pollination and a bunch of smart people with fresh ideas taking a look at that. So if you haven't paid attention to portable contacts, now would be a great time to get involved and join the discussion.
And I think you've opened up the list.
Yes, yeah, I said.
Yep. So there's that, and then folks interested in the OpenStack and somewhere near San Francisco can attend an event coming up. What's the date? Is that December 19th?
I think, yeah. So lots of people, presumably including our loyal viewers, are interested in what this whole OpenStack is and what's the state of the art. And it's moving so fast. If you think you know what OpenID is, but you haven't looked in the last 2 weeks, you don't know anything.
Yeah.
And so
this is called Learning About the OpenStack for the Social Web. We'll include a link for it.
And it's being hosted at Dig. Joe Stump from Dig and David Recordin from Six Apart put it together. And there's just going to be a bunch of short talks by various people, both of us included, among others, about the state of the art of the OpenStack, answering questions, and then kind of hang around and make it a social event. So anyone who's interested in that, I encourage you to come out and learn and ask questions and start hacking.
Yeah, so that includes Aaron Hammer on Discovery, Alan Tom on OAuth, David Recordin on OpenID, Kevin Marks on Open Social, Joseph on Portable Contacts, and Chris Messina on Activity Streams. I also noticed that among the attendees, Dave Morin of Facebook. So,
right, yeah.
Another sign that we're all essentially working toward a common vision here.
Yeah.
And I think this is further proof that this space is on fire. The holiday season's fast approaching, and I don't see this stuff slowing down even for that. So,
and there's so much inactive process right now. All of the things we talked about with OpenID coming out of the Internet Identity Workshop, making it work better. I mean, active projects working on all of that, things shipping every week. So you definitely can't miss a week.
So don't be worried about the fate of OpenID. The OpenStack is in good hands, and lots of good stuff is going to come out in the next few weeks. So make sure that you come back here, join us each week for another exciting episode of The Social Web TV.